I am the most renowned criminology expert in the interstellar world. Obsessed with studying all kinds of psychotic crime cases. Yet, after solving the biggest serial killer case in interstellar history, I was shot dead by a colleague. Simply because, on the night of our celebration banquet, I discovered he was the murderer's biological father. As I lay dying, I saw my team rushing over, then completely lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I had transmigrated into an 18th-tier scheming actress despised by the entire internet. Since I was already here, I might as well make the best of it. I quickly accepted my new identity. When my agent found me, I was lying on the couch, playing games with my online boyfriend of 3 months, while hiding in the grass and landing a perfect headshot on an enemy. I sweetly called for my little boyfriend to come rescue me. The moment I saw Agent Zhang walk in, I decisively exited the game. In my past life, because I was a criminology expert, no matter how innocent the first looked, no one dared to pursue me, even when I took a liking to a male colleague at the agency. Before I could make a move, he showed up the next day with a delicate little boyfriend, stammering as he told me he was already taken. After awkwardly greeting me, he quickly scurried away, visibly nervous. Heartbroken, I dragged my best friend to a bar, furious at my own helplessness. Is it really that hard to find a man for my bed? I had roared. That very night, when I got home, I saw my colleague's latest post, a picture of him kissing his boyfriend. Fine. He has a boyfriend, but I don't. Thanks to my superiors plastering my achievements everywhere. Forget men. Even serial killers would scream and run at the sight of me. So, after transmigrating, I quickly got myself an online boyfriend, one with 8-pack abs. To avoid scaring him away, I carefully maintained my persona as a sweet, fragile girl, flirting with him until he was completely flustered. Now, of course, I couldn't let my act be exposed. Perfect Crime Season 3 is about to start filming. The guests were chosen by online votes, and unfortunately, you've been selected. Agent Zhang's gaze held a trace of sympathy and concern. Even though this was currently the most popular variety show, he didn't see it as good news for me. After all, the original owner of this body was so hated that even drinking a sip of water could get her trending for the wrong reasons. Not to mention that this was a full-scale simulated crime reality show. I know you're timid and don't want to participate, he continued, but the company has already signed the contract. If you back out now, the penalty fees will be huge. So, you have no choice but to go. I picked up my phone, searched for information on the show, and the moment I confirmed it was a full crime simulation, I smiled. Alright, Agent Zhang let out a sigh. Don't be too nervous. This season's guests include the award-winning actor Lu Mingzhou and rising young actress Su Qi. Can you handle that? Lu Mingzhou, the original owner's ex-boyfriend. When I transmigrated, it had been the very day Lu Mingzhou and Su Qi went public with their relationship. The original owner had slit her wrists in despair. In her memories, she had loved him to death, clinging on to him even after he unilaterally broke up with her. She had refused to let go, causing drama on set, even staging manipulative little acts in an attempt to win him back. She had once thrown herself into Lu Mingzhou's arms, pretending to be frightened, whimpering and crying. But in the end, her little performance was exposed, and the entire internet mocked her, calling her the whimpering monster. To keep laughing at her, netizens had voted for me to join this show. Sure, Agent Zhang still looked uneasy, probably worried that I'd be terrified. After all, it was a crime simulation show. I sent my little boyfriend a message, telling him I'd be away on a business trip, then looked up at my agent. Relax, this is my field. If anyone's going to be scared, it sure as hell won't be me. The next morning, I arrived at the filming location at the address Agent Zhang had given me, Seaside Villa. The moment I stepped out of the car, I was already on live stream. The bullet comments flooded in instantly. Oh wow, Jiang Ren actually showed up. Like she's really here for the crime show. What? Is she planning to cling to our best actor again and whimper her way through? Ha ha ha, I even bought the latest mechanical keyboard for this. Can't wait to see her make a fool of herself. The other guests gradually arrived at the hall. There were a total of 5 of us, 2 men and 3 women. The male guests were Lu Mingzhou, the award-winning Best Actor, and Mu Bai, a top-tier idol. The female guests included Su Qi, the most popular young opera actress, Zhao Zhimian, a social media influencer with millions of followers, and me, Jiang Ran, an 18th-tier scheming actress despised by the entire internet. After a brief round of introductions, we all sat down, waiting for the director to arrive and assign us our roles and tasks. According to the usual format of the show, one of us would receive the murderer identity card and would be responsible for executing the perfect crime. The rest of the guests had to search for clues, expose the hidden killer among us, and if we succeeded, the murderer would be eliminated and we would win. But if we failed, then the murderer would be victorious. I sat on the sofa, only to meet Lu Mingzhou's disdainful gaze. I was stunned for a second, unable to recall who he was at first. Beside him, Su Qi's eyes instantly reddened at the sight. Jiang Ran, can you stop being so shameless? You're staring at Lu Mingzhou right in front of me. Don't you think that's a bit too much? As soon as she finished speaking, no one else chimed in. They simply watched in silence, but their gazes toward me seemed to gain a bit more confidence. Su Qi was livid, as if I had just seduced her man. Seeing her on the verge of tears, Lu Mingzhou quickly stood up, pulling her into his arms to console her. Then, shooting me a look of pure disgust, he declared, "It's fine. She won't take me away. I will always be yours." Only then did Su Qi manage to compose herself. Meanwhile, the live stream chat exploded. Wait, what just happened? I looked away for a second. Jiang Ran actually had the audacity to stare at Lu Mingzhou. She's unbelievable. Su Qi was practically in tears. I saw Jiang Ran just glance at him. She didn't even do anything. Was Su Qi overreacting a little? Oh, come on. If she really didn't do anything, Su Qi wouldn't have gotten this upset. She probably gave him one of those seductive, lingering gazes again. Silently, I reached for the fruit knife beside me. Memory surfaced. Technique I had once learned from my senior back in university. As a criminology expert, aside from majoring in criminal psychology and murder cases, I had also studied human anatomy. The move my senior had taught me was called the 36-strike blade. Each strike targeted the most painful spots on the human body. By the time all 36 slashes were delivered, the victim would only suffer minor injuries. Perfect for dealing with lunatics like these. I won't deny it. I have a violent streak. But hey, it's what I was trained for. And damn, was it satisfying. Just as I was about to stand up, the last guest finally arrived. I quietly put the knife back onto the fruit platter. Qin Gu entered, his gaze landing on me without a trace of surprise, only a hint of delight and a touch of shyness. As if he had remembered something, his earlobes turned red. With all the guests present, the production team gave us a brief rundown of the rules before instructing us to enter the simulation pods. Right before stepping in, I glanced across at Qin Gu. Well, what a coincidence. The pod door sealed shut. The next second, we found ourselves inside an old, worn-out bus. Aside from us, there were only a middle-aged driver and a pot-bellied man sitting near the front. As the bus climbed halfway up the mountain, it suddenly lurched to a stop. The driver put on a raincoat, grabbed an iron hammer, and stepped out of the vehicle. A moment later, his voice rang out from outside. "Someone come give me a hand." We exchanged glances. No one dared to move. Lu Mingzhou pulled Su Qi close, whispering, "Don't be scared. I'm here." Everyone knew. The plot had begun. It's starting. Who's going to be the first to die? Who is the murderer? Time passed. Yet, the bus didn't move an inch. The others decided to get off the bus and check it out. Just as I was about to follow, Su Qi called out to me, "Jiang Ran, you should just wait here. We don't have time to take care of you." I lowered my gaze, noticing the pot-bellied man's eyes lingering on my waist and legs. I dropped my gaze further. "All right. as soon as the others left the bus. The man with the beer belly got up and approached me, attempting to strike up a conversation. "Hey, pretty girl, you look just like my first love." I glanced at the bus's screen. A news alert flashed. A convict had escaped from prison. My gaze flickered to the disposable gloves peeking out of his pocket. I smiled. The killing game has begun. On the screen, the news broadcast continued. A convicted rapist had escaped from prison. His signature crime: before assaulting his victims, he always forced them to wear a red dress. Afterward, he would inject them with a special drug to dilute all bodily fluids, leaving no traceable evidence behind. He had been sentenced to life in prison, but a few days ago, he escaped through the sewer system. "Oh really?" He pretended to be scared, taking 2 steps back. The excitement in his eyes intensified, as if my reaction pleased him. Luckily, Chin-gu returned just then. His brows furrowed as he studied the man. Then he lowered his voice. "Don't be alone with him." I obediently nodded. Then, just as before, I spoke flirtatiously without hesitation. I tiptoed, leaned in, and whispered by his ear. "I only want to be alone with you." Chin-ji's ears turned red. Right now, everyone's focus was outside the bus. No one was paying attention to us. The bus couldn't be fixed, so we had no choice but to spend the night inside. The next morning, the driver sent us out to gather wooden planks to help stabilize the bus wheels in the mud. After last night's heavy rain, the road had become even more slippery and treacherous. The tires were completely stuck in the mud. Su-chi and I were originally assigned to find dry grass to help increase traction near the tires, but not even a few minutes later, Su-chi abandoned me to go find Lu Mingzhou. Left with no choice, I continued deeper into the forest alone. Behind me, I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, pretty girl, why are you wandering alone? These mountains are dangerous. There might be wild beasts. It's not safe here. Why don't you come with me?" I turned to see the pot-bellied man grinning at me. I nodded. "All right." I lifted my gaze toward the distance, catching a glimpse of Su-chi, but the moment our eyes met, she averted her gaze and hurried away. The fat man led me to an abandoned wooden house further up the mountain. There should be wooden planks inside. "Let's check it out together." I hesitated, looking uncertain. "I don't think that's a good idea." He became flustered. "Why not? Don't you want to get back down the mountain?" I smiled. "Of course I don't. I just want to kill." Because the identity card I drew for this game was the murderer. Inside the abandoned house, just as I was about to step out, carrying a few planks, Chin-gu kicked open the door. I looked up at him, slightly surprised. "What are you guys doing here?" Chin-gu didn't answer. After confirming that I was safe, he finally let out a breath of relief, then scanned the surroundings. Lu Mingzhou scoffed. "Su-chi brought us here to find you. How could you just run off with that guy? Have some self-respect." "You should really thank Su-chi," he added. "She was the only one kind enough to insist on rescuing you. Worried something might happen to you." I slowly turned my gaze towards Su-chi, who looked visibly pale. 2 hours. It had already been 2 hours. If I really had been in danger, I would have been long dead by now. Yet, here they were, acting as if they had heroically saved me. How touching. Lu Mingzhou looked around and frowned. "Where's that fat guy?" I raised a finger and pointed to the back door. "He went out to look for dry grass. Told me to wait here." Su-chi's expression visibly improved. "What took you so long?" I smiled faintly. "I don't know. He left and never came back." The others' expressions turned grim, because at that moment, the crime simulation system's holographic screen lit up with a notification. "Let's go find him." With that, they all turned to leave. At the very back of the group, Chin-gu quietly grabbed my hand. "Are you okay?" I shook my head. "But, as for that fat man, they probably won't be able to find him." I turned my head and glanced at the wooden beams of the abandoned house. His limp body hung there, limbs dangling lifelessly. Just moments ago, he had been right above Lu Mingzhou's head. And yet, not a single one of them had noticed. I flashed a bright smile in that direction. The cameras only captured my expression, not the corpse in the red dress swinging from the rafters. Honestly, this simulated crime show was quite entertaining, compared to reading case studies in textbooks or analyzing real crime scenes. I found this immersive experience far more enjoyable. It even made me wonder, should I try executing a perfect body disposal next time? Disposing of a body was generally considered a low-level method, but it was also the one most likely to leave behind clues and mistakes. The group searched everywhere but still couldn't find the fat man. Luckily, the wooden planks I had collected helped us get the bus out of the mud pit. The bus wound its way along the mountain roads, twisting and turning until, finally, at 4:30 p.m., we arrived at a small, remote town. There was a modest little inn that served both food and lodging. Downstairs was a restaurant, while upstairs had rooms for rent. As we stepped inside, a plainly dressed innkeeper greeted us warmly, showering everyone with compliments about our looks. The group visibly relaxed. I, on the other hand, narrowed my eyes at the shoes on her feet. My memory had always been sharp. Back on the bus, when we had first set off, the driver had been wearing this exact same pair of shoes. Later, when the bus got stuck, he had changed into black rain boots and put on a raincoat before stepping out. But that original pair of shoes, now they were on the innkeeper's feet. The restaurant, everyone ordered their meals and sat down to eat. I watched as the innkeeper emerged from the backyard, carrying plates of food. Smiling, I asked, "Madam, are you the only one running this place?" "That sounds exhausting." She instinctively glanced at the driver, then quickly looked away, forcing a smile. "Yes, it's just me. My husband works on a construction site and is rarely home." As she spoke, a trace of melancholy flickered across her face. Su Chi frowned, snapping at me. "Jiang Ran, can't you be a little more considerate when you speak?" The innkeeper hurriedly waved her hands. It's fine. Enjoy your meal. I'll be in the kitchen." I couldn't be bothered with Su Chi. Instead, I stood up and raised my voice. "Madam, where's the restroom?" The driver flinched, his body instinctively jerking upright, before quickly forcing himself to sit back down. The innkeeper pointed me in a direction. I headed upstairs, knocking one door at a time. All empty. Then, I walked up to the rooftop. There, in the stainless steel water tank, I found the truth. No wonder my mission required me to kill 3 people. Yet, back on the bus, there had only been 2. Nightfall. After dinner, we all returned to our rooms to rest. At midnight, I got up and stepped out into the hallway. That very night, every guest received a message from the show's production team. 3:3. As the holographic display lit up, everyone quickly gathered in the hallway. After confirming that all the contestants were present, they frowned. "Where's the driver?" Exchanging uneasy glances, they decided to go look for him. Someone even knocked on the innkeeper's door. This wasn't a large inn. The innkeeper lived on the first floor, but there was no response. The door locks in this hotel were smart keycard locks. Once shut, they could only be opened with the correct keycard, and all the spare keycards were supposedly kept by the innkeeper. Qin Gu was the first to grab a chair and smashed open the door. Inside, the innkeeper lay motionless on the floor, completely lifeless. Qin Gu searched her room, eventually finding all the keycards inside her personal safe. Meanwhile, the keycard to the driver's room was lying on her bedside table. Using the spare key, they unlocked the driver's room, but inside was completely empty. The only clues left to investigate were on the innkeeper's body. Everyone returned to the first floor, staring at her lifeless figure. Qin Gu turned to me and the other 2 women. "Check her body for any wounds." After a thorough examination, both of them shook their heads. They even used their portable fingerprint scanners, but all they found were a chaotic mess of fingerprints. None of ours were among them. Livestream chat. "This is so weird. This crime simulation feels especially strange. That fat guy vanished into thin air. Okay, fine. But now the driver is gone too. And the innkeeper is dead, but her body has no wounds. At least in previous seasons, people didn't just disappear like this. And if the room keycard was in her room, How did the killer even get inside? This is just layers upon layers of mystery. Chin-gu sat on the side, frowning deeply. The driver must still be inside this house. But despite searching everywhere, no one could find him. Left with no other choice, they decided to return to their rooms and rest. As I was leaving, I glanced at the lock on the innkeeper's door, my eyes narrowing slightly. Then, I pretended to be scared and burrowed into Chin Ji's arms. I'm a little scared. Without a word, I slipped something into Chin Ji's pocket. The atmosphere was heavier than ever. If they couldn't find the killer today, they would lose the game. Of course, if they guessed wrong, they would still lose. Everyone began eliminating suspects one by one, until the final consensus was Lu Mingzhou was the murderer. Su Qi panicked. Impossible. I went to Lu Mingzhou's room last night. I know he's not the killer. She knew it wasn't her either. Her gaze landed on Chin-gu. It's him. It has to be him. Chin-gu chuckled softly. Evidence. Su Qi fell silent. A crime this perfect, she couldn't find a single trace of evidence. But she knew it wasn't her. She knew it wasn't Lu Mingzhou. And Chin Ji's eerie calmness yesterday. It had to be him. The other two exchanged glances and ultimately agreed with her. I sat off to the side. Then, I spoke. Stop guessing. It's me. Lu Mingzhou's expression darkened. Jiang ran. Chasing clout is one thing, but this is going too far. Su Qi is trying to figure out the real murderer, and here you are, throwing yourself at Chin-gu just to piss me off. And now, you're trying to take the fall for him. His words carried an implicit warning, as if advising me to behave. I shrugged. I just confessed. But no one believes me. Time ticked down. I let out a breath of relief. A message followed, a photo. In the end, everyone voted for Chin-gu. Only I voted for myself. But unfortunately, Chin Ji's votes outnumbered mine. The moment the countdown hit 0, we were transported back to the simulation pods. The production team had already set up a few seats. The host announced the guest's failure. So, who was the real murderer? One of the staff members smiled mysteriously. Find out tomorrow. Same time. Same place. Don't miss it. Live stream chat exploded. WTF. Just tell us already. Why do they always cut it off at the most suspenseful moment? I hate this kind of marketing. Was it really Chin-gu? I don't think so. Something feels off. TBH, I watched the whole thing, and I didn't pick up a single clue. This season's difficulty is insane. I received a message from the production team. Tomorrow, your identity will be revealed. As expected, when we arrived at the set, the staff was preparing to unveil the truth. I glanced over at Chin Ji's seat. Empty. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chin-gu. Got a fever. Not coming today. In it, a handsome man lay back with an ice pack on his forehead. His dark robe hung loosely, revealing a pale, well-defined chest. His delicate face and ears were flushed red from the fever. Getting sick isn't always a bad thing. On the holographic screen, hidden cameras from the simulation began playing footage. 1. The cabin. I stood inside the wooden shack, looking terrified at the beer-bellied man, watching as he pulled out a red dress. Be a good girl, he said. Hurry up and put it on. I took the dress, running my fingers over its smooth, durable nylon fabric. Satisfied, I smiled. Then picked up a wooden plank and knocked him unconscious. Afterward, I strung him up on the rafters, his limp body dangling lifelessly. Because he had passed out before being hanged, there were no signs of struggle. His limbs quickly relaxed completely. Then, I carefully restored the scene, fixing the marks left from his fall. Once everything was in place, I simply sat on a worn-out stool, calmly waiting. Not a single trace of panic. Live stream chat. Holy shit, she's too calm. Jiang Ran is the murderer. She's terrifying. She even fixed the grass that got flattened when the fat guy fell. What kind of psychopath does that? The scene shifted. Now, it showed me and Chin-gu leaving the wooden house with the group. As I turned back, I flashed a bright smile toward the corpse hanging in the rafters. The footage paused on my face. This is horrifying. I thought she was just a manipulative schemer, but she's a goddamn femme fatale. Has Jiang Ran really never committed a crime before? How did she hang him at just the right height so no one noticed? That guy's feet were literally right above Lu Mingzhou's head. The guests had all eaten their fill, getting ready to head back to their rooms. The driver's lips curled into a sinister smile. trailing behind the group. I passed by his room and pressed a piece of chewing gum into his door lock. The moment he closed the door, the gum sealed it shut. Then, I smiled to myself. At midnight, I quietly opened his door, with a towel in hand. I wrapped it tightly around his neck while he was fast asleep. After he stopped breathing, I carefully placed the towel back on his body and began disposing of the corpse. I dragged him with a bath towel all the way to the rooftop. For most people, this would be exhausting, but I happened to have more strength than average. When I opened the water storage tank, the sight inside nearly made people vomit. Because this was a black market hotel. The truth behind the inn, I only realized after checking. This wasn't just a regular inn. The driver kidnapped guests, murdering the men and throwing them into the water tank. As for the women, they were used for forced surrogacy, repeatedly assaulted by the driver and innkeeper. If they failed to conceive, they were murdered. I had seen the fertility drugs in the innkeeper's room. That was all the confirmation I needed. After dumping the driver's body into the tank, I put on gloves and straightened out the wrinkled carpet in the hallway. Then, I wiped my fingerprints off the doorknob, peeled off the chewing gum, and sanitized the lock with alcohol. After that, I went downstairs and effortlessly pushed open the innkeeper's door. The innkeeper's last moments. On the driver's keyring, I had seen the innkeeper's room key. When I entered, I saw her holding her phone, trying to call the driver. Why isn't he picking up? That useless bastard. I smiled. Because his phone is dead. I shut it off and removed the SIM card. The innkeeper glanced up at me, her eyes flashing with greed. What is it? I sighed softly. My clothes ripped. Do you have a sewing kit? She pulled out a needle and beckoned me to the cellar. Come with me. It's going to rain tonight. I need to move some things inside. She never even questioned how I got into her room. I nodded. As I turned, I thrust the needle straight into her skull. At the time, I deliberately chose a thick needle meant for sewing quilts. The innkeeper had been entirely focused on luring me into the cellar while I was alone. She hadn't even noticed. The needle I picked was the thickest one available. As soon as she collapsed, I looked down at the faint footprints on the tiled floor and began cleaning up. I wiped my fingerprints off the needle, and, before leaving, I slipped on a pair of slippers from her shoe cabinet. They were a size too big for me. By the time I reached the carpeted area, I kicked off the slippers, wrapped them in a plastic bag, and carried them back to my room. There, I took out a pair of scissors, cut the slippers into tiny pieces, and flushed them down the toilet. I did the same with the gloves, cutting them apart before disposing of them. Finally, I cleaned the scissors, expression still perfectly composed. Live stream chat exploded. Holy shit, this is terrifying. She's way too meticulous. Someone get her registered at the police station, ASAP. Her methods are so twisted. This isn't normal. No wonder they couldn't find a wound. It was on the head. No visible blood, no obvious injuries. A perfect crime. And flushing the shoes down the drain, erasing all traces. Who the hell is she? The final image revealed by the production team was of me standing outside the innkeeper's door, burying myself in Chin Ji's arms. In my hand was a nail polish remover pad. While checking the innkeeper's body, I had wiped away the only visible bloodstain on her head. Then, I had stuffed the used wipe into Chin Ji's pocket. Later, when we searched for the driver's corpse, it had been raining heavily. Chin Gu was soaked through, and by the time anyone checked, the tiny traces of blood on the alcohol pad in his pocket had already been completely washed away. That night, I had gone to Chin Ji's room, cheeks flushed, claiming the bathroom in my room had no water. When he wasn't paying attention, I retrieved the alcohol pad from his laundry. Everything completely seamless. Live stream chat went wild. Oh my god, everything makes sense now. Every weird detail now fits perfectly. This is insane. I swear, this is the best murder mystery I've ever seen. She really fooled everyone, even us. I'm officially terrified of Jiang Ran. After the show ended, the production team handed me a check. I asked Agent Jiang to donate it to the orphanage where the original Jiang Ran grew up. For years, The original host had been continuously supporting the orphanage, investing nearly all of her savings into it. As for me, I drove to Chin Ji's house. The address had been sent to me via text. When I arrived, I knocked on his door. "Chin Gu, are you home?" The door opened, and the next second, he pulled me into his arms, gaze fixed on my lips, his ears burning red. "Going on a variety show with your ex, and telling me it was a business trip." I blinked. Oh, right. I had told Chin Gu it was a business trip, only because Agent Zhang didn't want me exposing my identity. And besides, back then, I had been entirely focused on recreating crime scenes from cases I had worked on before. The only difference was, before, I was solving the murders. This time, I was committing them. I didn't want to scare off my little boyfriend, so I hadn't told him. Chin Gu was a year older than me, but compared to me, a criminology expert, he was actually 3 months younger. On instinct, I coaxed him. "That's all in the past, darling. Right now, my heart belongs only to you. If you don't believe me, you can feel for yourself." Chin Gu immediately turned red, his previous grievance and anger disappearing in an instant. We sat in his living room, and he turned on the TV. Then, he stood up to get me water. Of course, I couldn't let a sick man take care of me, so I got up and went to the kitchen myself. But when I returned, the TV screen was already playing the unreleased hidden footage from today's broadcast. I stumbled in shock, losing my balance, and fell straight into Chin Ji's arms. My forehead hit his chin. I sucked in a breath. There was no way. No way I could let him see this. What if he got scared and ran away? In a panic, I covered his ears and stood up to block his view of the screen. I remembered, this footage was exactly 15 minutes long. I slowly straightened up, kneeling on Chin Ji's lap. He only needed to lift his head to see the curves of my chest. He struggled to get up. "Jiang Ran, stop messing around." I immediately wrapped my arms around him and kissed him deeply. The moment our lips met, his struggling hands went limp and dropped down. More than 10 minutes later, my lips were slightly swollen, while he, like a wolf cub tasting meat for the first time, had eyes burning with hunger, pulling me back in for another round of kisses. By the time he was done, my whole body was weak and trembling, utterly lost in the moment. His hot breath brushed against my ear. "You want to know how high my fever was today?" I looked up at him, a memory flashing through my mind. The first time I lured Chin Gu into a video call while he was in the shower. His ears had been bright red, his voice nervous, his eyes filled with embarrassment. But now, he could say things like this so shamelessly. His gaze darkened. In one swift motion, he picked me up like a koala, carrying me straight to his bedroom. Few steps in, my eyes turned red, and I nearly burst into tears. "Chin Gu, you're too hot." He kissed my lips softly, his voice husky. "It's fine." I sank into the soft silk sheets, my fingertips tracing down his broad, pale back, leaving behind a trail of red marks. For the next few days, I was completely useless, stuck in Chin Ji's arms like a boneless puddle. When Agent Zhang called me again, I looked up. Chin Gu stood in the kitchen, wearing only a pair of white basketball shorts and a light-colored apron, cooking. I swallowed hard. He just recovered from a fever, and he's already walking around half-naked in an apron. Hearing no response, Agent Zhang called out again. "Jiang Ran, are you listening?" I snapped back to reality. "Yeah, I'm listening." Agent Zhang had called because the footage from the show had gone viral, and netizens had flooded the police station with reports. The authorities had taken notice and contacted Agent Zhang, asking me to come in and file a report. All right. After hanging up, I changed my clothes. Gu looked at me. "Where are you going?" Slipping on a pair of delicate sandals, I stood up and hugged him, eyes shifting away slightly. "Agent Zhang wants to discuss some work matters." Chin Gu nodded. He pressed a light kiss to my forehead, his voice deep. "Okay." At the police station, a group of uniformed officers studied me with curiosity. After a quick report filing, I filled out my personal details and address. Then, one of the officers pulled out some case files. "Miss Jiang Ran, could you take a look at this?" I glanced at the documents. Frowning slightly, the murderer disguised themselves as a fisherman, stood dozens of meters away from the victim, and used a fishing rod to hurl a heavy iron weight at the person working out on the opposite side. That's how they created a false alibi. A nearby officer slammed his thigh in realization. Of course, when the victim died, there were a bunch of people fishing nearby. We thought it was just a random object thrown from a distance. But we never found the weapon. After flipping through a few more crime cases, I left. Later that day, a paparazzi photo of me leaving the police station spread across the internet. Netizen reactions. "She actually went to file a report. Well, of course. She's terrifying. Of course, she has to be registered. Jiang Ran, my queen, the pride of the entertainment industry. Wait, has Jiang Ran actually killed someone before?" That night, I trended on social media once again. Agent Zhang was beyond thrilled. "This is the first time you've gone viral without being dragged through the mud." Not long after, a video resurfaced, exposing a past conflict between Su Qi and the original Jiang Ran. In the footage, the original Jiang Ran stood frozen, watching Su Qi and Lu Mingzhou kissing in a corner. Her eyes were red with sorrow, but she never actually cried or whimpered. As for the photo that had caused the original Jiang Ran to be hated by the entire internet, the one where she fell into Lu Mingzhou's arms, it was fake. In the video, the original Jiang Ran had simply lost her balance, causing her to stumble toward Lu Mingzhou, and the very next second, Lu Mingzhou had pushed her straight into the river on set. The video ended with another damning image, a photo taken before their breakup, showing Lu Mingzhou and Su Qi secretly entering a hotel together. Netizens exploded. "No wonder he broke up with Jiang Ran so fast. It was a seamless transition. Wait, wasn't Su Qi the one crying about Jiang Ran being the third party? Looks like she was actually the mistress all along." And in that crime simulation, didn't Su Qi literally watch Jiang Ran follow that fat man into the woods? She wandered around for a while before finding Qin Gu. Were they hoping Qin Gu would come and see Jiang Ran being assaulted? Disgusting. Did Su Qi really not know Jiang Ran and Lu Mingzhou were dating? Wasn't Jiang Ran and Lu Mingzhou both from the same orphanage? She stole her boyfriend knowing they grew up together. I'm actually sick to my stomach. Su Qi always acted like she was the legitimate girlfriend, constantly putting Jiang Ran down. Turns out she was the homewrecker all along. As if any woman would want a man like Lu Mingzhou. Unfollowing. I can't believe I ever liked her. I turned off my phone and immediately received an anonymous text message. "Jiang Ran, I leaked the video. Please don't kill me." The original Jiang Ran had once asked a set crew member to retrieve the footage, but was denied. Without evidence, she had been unable to defend herself against Lu Mingzhou and Su Qi's accusations. Now, with the truth exposed, Lu Mingzhou and Su Qi's careers collapsed overnight. Within days, their agency completely froze their contracts. Lu Mingzhou had tried contacting me, but I blocked and deleted him without hesitation. He even showed up at my apartment, saying he regretted everything. But Jiang Ran was already dead. If he wanted to apologize, he should go find her in hell. So, I kindly suggested he do just that. He fled in terror. Days later, the local police released reports confirming that all the cases I had analyzed were solved exactly as I had predicted. Netizens joked, "She works in entertainment, but her heart belongs to the crime scene." For half a year, I spent my nights playing the weak, clingy girlfriend in Qin Ji's arms, and my days at the police station, solving homicides. Qin Gu spent his days at work, his nights rolling in bed with me. Ah, to be young. After we got married, Qin Gu took me to a historic town to visit his grandmother. A morning in the old town, I wore a pale yellow sundress, my long, straight hair cascading down my back. On my feet, a pair of white Mary Jane shoes. I looked gentle and elegant, a picture of soft femininity, the moment Grandma Chin saw me. Her eyes lit up with joy. She lived in a traditional ancestral house, with blue bricks and gray tiles, tucked deep inside the quaint old town. As soon as we arrived, Chin Gu was dragged outside by his grandmother. Left alone in his room, I sat on his bed, swinging my legs. Then, a mouse leapt from the wooden rafters, landing on the desk. Staring at me triumphantly, I sneered. Without hesitation, I grabbed Chin Ji's old shoe from the cabinet and slammed it down. One hit. The once cocky little rodent now lay stiff on the desk, its four legs frozen midair. I was about to say something when I looked up and saw Chin Gu and his grandmother standing at the door. Both of them stared at me, wide-eyed. They had just witnessed me, in a delicate sundress, one foot propped on a chair, brutally beating a mouse to death. I hurriedly dropped the shoe, whimpered, and threw myself into Chin Ji's arms. "Hubby, I'm scared." Chin Gu was completely frozen. Seeing how I kept snuggling into his chest, he finally wrapped his arms around my waist, completely forgetting what he had just witnessed. Even Grandma Chin tried to console me. "It's all right, child. This town is full of rats. Back in the day, the old Wang family's grandson got his nose bitten off by a rat when he was just a month old." I shuddered dramatically, pressing myself closer to Chin Gu. Chin Gu immediately rushed me to a store, buying glue traps and rat poison. Then, he set them up himself, while I waited outside. "Don't worry, darling. I'll get rid of them all for you." Watching Chin Gu bend over, his broad back moving as he worked, I clicked my tongue. What a great ass. When he proudly turned back, announcing that he had already killed one, I grabbed his hand, smiling. "Hubby, you're amazing." Men were so easy to please. Even though his face remained stoic, I knew him too well. If he had a tail, it would be wagging high in the air right now. When we got back home, our phones simultaneously chimed. Chin Gu checked his messages. I myself, taking my phone to the bathroom. Inside, I locked the door, opened the message, and saw an invitation from the Criminal Investigation Bureau. They wanted to give me an award, probably because, in the past 6 months, I had solved over 100 cases. When I stepped out, Chin Gu told me, "I have a contract signing at the company tonight. I won't be able to keep you company." I hugged him, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. Then, with a bright smile, I happily waved him off, watching as he got into his car and drove away. After that, I turned back inside, changed into a sleek black Chanel-style suit, and left. That night, after receiving my award and stepping off the stage, I spotted a man in uniform sitting in the first row. He had his head lowered, not sparing me even a glance. There was something familiar about him. I walked closer, and as if on instinct, he slowly lifted his face. For a moment, we silently stared at each other. Then, without a word, we both turned and walked away at the same time. Not just a little wolf cub, top-ranked criminal investigator by day, and a high society billionaire by night. When I got home, Chin Gu pinned me to the bed. "Sweetheart, you sure have a lot of side gigs." I let out an awkward laugh. "Yours aren't exactly few either." "So, in the show, you knew I was the killer?" Chin Gu nodded, his lips brushing softly against mine. "I knew." The end.